This part of the castle was already finished, but for the barracks we need a tower here. Building the barracks meant reworking this older part of the castle. I want it to feel like a smaller castle of its own, with walls and towers, so I decided to mirror the existing tower section from the left side over to the right. We'll also be working on another section of the barracks next to the armory, but before that I want to show you some of the new parts I picked up. Besides the usual things like animals that makes the world feel more alive and weapons which probably do the exact opposite, I've also started paying more attention to printed tiles and picked up some interesting ones. As you can see here, sellers often pack multiple lots into the same bag. Sorting everything takes quite a bit of time, but it's also strangely relaxing. When buying parts, I mostly rely on BrickLink. Usually there are one or two pieces that are absolute blockers and that I really need to continue building. And then I end up filling the order with way too many nice to have parts. In my latest orders, I mostly added white and reddish brown parts to the collection. I'm also always trying to pick up basic light bluish grey and dark bluish grey bricks, plates and tiles whenever I can get them at a reasonable price. On top of that, brackets, modified bricks, slopes and wedge plates are pretty much always must-haves. Speaking of wedge plates, I had to restock these brown 2x2 wedge plates to finally finish the floor in the dining room. And that looks much better now. As mentioned, today I want to extend the barracks to the right side of the armory. There's a height difference of around 3 bricks here, and I never really finalized the ground of this area yet, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to build here in the end. With some large dark tan plates that close off the ground, I can finally start laying out the foundation for the next section of the barracks. I still don't even know what this barracks room is going to become. What I do know is that the shape of the new room will be an irregular quadrilateral. I'm pretty sure I've recorded that sentence for 50 times by now, but it's not getting better, so anyway. The room does have two 90-degree angles, but apart from that, the shape is fairly uneven. That means we need a lot of 19-degree wedge plates again, just to close all the gaps as cleanly as possible. My idea for this room, although it's far from finalized, was some kind of entrance hall, with stairs to the upper level and a few details, or maybe just another living area. But first, this room needs to be separated from the armory. Because of the height difference, we also need to add a few steps leading down. Building a barracks of this size is actually pretty complicated. I want it to be connected with the castle walls. Every room needs to be accessible, and every space should still feel detailed and believable. Even though I usually have a rough idea of what I want things to look like in the end, I also need to physically build around those ideas and see if they actually work. And in this case, I need to build this freaking tower first before I really can decide what belongs in this room. So for the first time in this series, we're completely tearing down a small section of the castle just to rebuild something different in its place. And just because some of you thought that it would actually be good if I built everything modular, it has always been. The footprint of the tower is obviously larger than the wall section, so I wanted to integrate it into the landscape with as few changes as possible. On the inside, the wedge plates don't line up perfectly anymore, but since most of this area will be covered by walls and buildings anyway, I didn't spend too much time trying to perfect it. And I really like placing the tower into a finished landscape instead of building the structure first and working on the surroundings afterwards. It already looks great with all the greenery and flowers around it. As for the tower itself, I wanted it to be a direct recreation of the existing one. So I didn't only copy the footprint and walls, but also the pattern of the floor tiles. And of course, I did not forget the mandatory crates and barrels. When I started tearing down this section, I assumed I could just remove a few bricks and create an opening in the wall where I could fit the tower. But it ended up turning into a complete rebuild of the entire wall section. The reason is probably that I always build things a little bit too sturdy. I have to admit though, that these more repetitive builds, like recreating this tower, are actually pretty satisfying. They create a noticeable result in a relatively short amount of time, especially compared to sections where you constantly have to rethink things and make small changes over and over again until you're finally happy with them. When rebuilding this part of the castle, I was also able to make a few improvements. For example, at this band there used to be a small gap, because I wasn't very experienced with snot building and brackets at that time. Now the transition between the upper and lower wall modules is completely seamless. Another thing that changed in this rebuild is the use of ingot pieces within the wall. I originally started using those details on the large defensive tower to add more texture and structure to the outer facade. And rebuilding this section was a perfect opportunity to bring that style over here as well. One difference compared to the existing tower is that the lower part of this one is integrated into a wall module, while the first tower is a separate module on its own. This is mainly just to avoid ending up with too many tiny sections. Nevertheless, I still added another separation point where the wall battlements end, so the upper part of the tower can be removed individually. I also reworked the battlements on the 19-degree bend in the wall section. Mainly because I didn't check how I originally built this battlement, I ended up using a single 3x6 wedge plate instead of two 2x3 plates I used before. With a few adjustments, I was also able to include a 1x1 Technic brick with an axle hole, which also adds this small cross-shaped detail between these two battlements. I was about to start working on the floor pattern for the first level of the tower when I realized I was missing a specific part, this tile with the cutouts. So instead, I continued working on the small barracks wall section. At least for this part I actually have all the tiles I need. This corridor will eventually connect the entrance hall of the barracks with the corridors inside the outer castle walls. In my mind, I want the path through the barracks to feel a little confusing for outsiders. But I still haven't fully decided where the entrance from the outside into the barracks will be. Like on the other side of the barracks outer walls, this section will also get some barred windows. And while these walls are still far from finished, I once again found myself checking whether I should make the barracks courtyard larger to create more space for the training ground that will eventually go here. All of that was suddenly overshadowed by a surprisingly fast BrickLink delivery containing these 2x2 tiles with the cutouts. So I decided to continue working on the tower instead, at least for now. As mentioned after the intro, I always end up filling my orders with some nice to have parts. And I think the MVP of this one was definitely these 1x1 bricks in dark bluish grey. And believe it or not, these are actually not that easy to get at a reasonable price. And I definitely did not order this 1x1 modified brick that somehow found its way into the lot of 1x1 bricks. But I'm not complaining. Even with simple copy and paste tasks like this floor tile pattern, it's surprisingly easy to make small mistakes. while laying down these tiles, I suddenly noticed that the whole pattern has shifted by one stud. And for the first time in months, I pulled the gatehouse back over here. It's already covered in dust. You didn't actually think I had taken it apart, right? I just wanted to get a feeling for what the front of the castle will look like once the little tower is finished. And I also need to talk about something important here. Whenever I watch videos, I always notice mistakes or things people completely overlook. And I'm sitting there thinking, seriously, how do you not see that? Well, apparently it happens to me too. Unbelievable, I know, but I completely messed up the tile pattern on the wall's battlement. Did you spot it already? Okay, to be fair, the Gatehouse module next to this one wasn't even connected while I was laying down the tiles. Still, I somehow didn't notice it afterwards either, only when I put the old and new sections side by side during editing. I had already built this tower all the way up to the final modular section and was hoping to finish it during this building session. But I definitely didn't expect the whole missing essential parts problem to come back and haunt me this often during this update. So while placing the next BrickLink orders, because of course I couldn't find both missing part types from the same seller, I decided to work on another interesting and complicated problem instead. Channel veterans already know what's coming. No, it's not roofs this time, stairs. While on one side, this staircase no longer really makes sense in its current form because it has a passing issue now, I still need to deal with another staircase leading up to the first floor of the barracks on the other side. Just for the fun of it, I once again wanted to build a 45-degree staircase with a 1:1 thread to riser ratio. So the first step was simply sketching out the general path of the staircase. Last time, a fellow redditor taught me that you can actually achieve this simply by combining corner bricks. I also started working on the lower steps with a more detailed idea in mind. And I wanted to highlight the risers using these dark bluish grey ingot pieces. But I have to admit that I didn't get much building done during those days because I was really busy with other things. So once again, I just had my BrickLink orders shipped. This time I also mixed in a few parts I hadn't bought before, because I got them really cheap and thought they might be useful for different things in future. These 1x3 arches in light bluish grey were actually one of the parts I was missing for the top section of the tower. Everything in red is basically for future roofs, and I also picked up these black pots and keys. I think it's pretty obvious why I bought more grey parts, and these 1x4 plates with the groove are really useful whenever I want to keep some studs accessible between separable modules, for example between wall corridors and battlements. I also got some minifigure parts. I really don't have many medieval citizens that aren't military characters. These dark green dress pieces from Professor McGonagall actually have some potential in my opinion. But I have to replace the hands because my castle world runs on classic LEGO yellow minifigures. For now, I'll place McGonagall on the stairs. She definitely has this kind of authoritative presence that nobody would want to mess with. Perfect for guarding this unfinished barracks area. I'm also slowly collecting these 2x3 plates with cutouts so I can finally refactor the portcullis in the gatehouse. In the second package, I finally got the other essential part for the top section of the tower, the 2x2 double convex inverted slope. It's actually a pretty expensive part in light bluish grey, because it turns out it wasn't included in as many sets as I originally thought. I also got some tiles in this order. In particular, I picked up a larger lot of 2x2 corner tiles in light bluish grey, as well as some 3x3 macaroni tiles. In future, I want to play around with different macaroni tiles and see what crazy patterns I can create. I also picked up a bunch of these larger fern leaves, mostly for the big pine forest planned for the future. And a lot of other really cool parts as well. I can't cover everything as much as I'd like to, but I already bought some of these parts with specific ideas in mind, like an alchemist for example. This project is going to continue for a long time. Okay, I honestly have no idea why I bought these burger bun corners. I think I just wanted to get some medium nougat parts, I guess? Anyway, let's continue and finally finish that tower. Adding an inverted corner slope here and a bar over there, so the soldiers have something to hold on to. And then it's back to the usual mix of light and dark bluish grey. So I have to be honest here for a moment. I'm starting to feel a little stuck with the progress on the barracks right now. Every time I think about all the walls, roofs and everything else that's still missing, it feels like I, and probably you guys as well, could use a bit of variety. What do you think? Should I switch things up and add some greenery again? Some dark tan? Some landscape and vegetation? Or maybe prepare the module behind the gatehouse, or continue building the wall on the other side of the gatehouse? The lord of the castle demands some variety. Anyway guys, that's it for this update. For some reason, this somehow turned into the longest episode so far, even though I still feel like I barely got anything done. I even kept building because I didn't feel like I had enough content for an episode yet. But apparently the clock says 60 minutes, so I guess we're good. I hope you still enjoyed this update and that you like the new front of the castle with the added tower. I really like how it turned out already, and it's not even finished yet. The ingot details and all the greenery are still missing. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas and suggestions in the comments. And if you'd like to follow the progress of this castle, consider subscribing for future updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, the castle keeps growing, brick by brick.